really grateful. Roger Severino made time to come over with us here at the Phyllis Schlafly Center, our DC Center. He's the director of the Office of Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, we all say. And he was also was at Heritage, headed up the center there, the DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Societies and Attorneys. Worked in the Department of Justice. He has been around the conservative movement. But Roger, one of the things we were so excited about was your position in HHS has been somewhat unique. Not somewhat, totally unique. Tell us why and how it came about.
It's been a bit of a revolution to the office. So many civil rights offices are somewhat sleepy in a lot of ways. They were founded in the civil rights movement, and thankfully we don't have the rampant racial discrimination we used to have. So at HHS, it was desegregating the hospitals. That was what really brought OCR to life. We don't have that level of discrimination on the basis of race anymore, thank God. And then the mission has expanded to cover other protected classes, disability rights, sex, age, etc. One thing that was left behind, however, was conscience and religious freedom. Of all the civil rights, that's in the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah,
it was right at the very beginning, right there in black and white, part of the foundation of our country. Yet in the civil rights offices throughout the federal government, you don't see a focus on conscience and religious freedom. And that is a shame, because not only is it in the Constitution, it is in our laws. Congress has time and time again protected religious freedom and conscience through statutes. We have the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That was what protected the Little Sisters of the Poor from the HHS contraceptive mandate. Right? This was one of the outgrowths of Obamacare, forcing nuns to have insurance coverage for contraceptives for fellow nuns, which made no sense to anybody except a bureaucrat at HHS.
Right.
And we started a new division. I launched it following the president's footsteps to protect religious freedom, a new division dedicated just to conscience and religious freedom within HHS, within the Civil Rights Office, to at least create parity with every other civil right. You have all the civil rights, which are incredibly important. Don't leave conscience and religious freedom behind. It has pride of place, and we're enforcing it. We have dedicated career staff now that are permanent because we want it to be part of the fabric of the federal government, to change the culture of government from one of hostility that would go after nuns and threaten to shut them down with fines, to welcoming everybody of whatever faith, to have an equal seat at the table, so government doesn't discriminate but protects. And I'll touch on the issues of nurses and abortion and how it all comes together, but we've created an institution to outlast whatever administration's in place. So,
I don't know if I was telling Rebecca about this. Rebecca Gantner, who is our Washington, D.C. executive director of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. When I was in private law practice, I was a lawyer for some pharmacy owners when Rod Blagojevich, the governor of Illinois, started changing the laws to try to force them to dispense RU-46 and contraception and all. And a lot of the action was at the state level. The governors were doing things, and they were trying to fit within is the problem of conscience, and Rebecca can mention this too, with the COVID thing. I think reasonable people can say, hey, we got to do something. There is a disease. But one of the groups that seemed to get targeted was religious communities, right? Worship and all. Is the action now, as you point out, federal? Is it state? Where is it? How do people, cultivate conscience protection?
It's definitely both.
Yeah.
When you have the growth of the federal government and the administrative state,
right,
you're going to have church-state conflicts, right? As the federal government grows, religious freedom will tend to shrink, especially on issues of human concern, the beginning of life, the end of life, questions of marriage, identity, all these things where people of faith have an important voice. The more the government tries to take over that space, the more you're going to hit conflict at the federal level.
Right.
That's one of the reasons we have the Conscience Division, to be a watchdog, to make sure the federal government doesn't infringe people's rights.
Right.
There's another side of the coin, and these are federal laws that prohibit discrimination by states. So we saw the state of California and the state of Hawaii go after pregnancy resource centers that are pro-life, designed to help women, to give them alternatives to abortion. Those states were requiring these pregnancy resource centers to refer for free or low-cost abortion. Can you imagine that? A woman comes in and says, the state of California requires me to tell you where you can get an abortion. That's exactly contrary to their mission. They sued and won some relief at the Supreme Court, we came in and said, you've also violated federal law, the Weldon Amendment. It says you cannot discriminate on the basis of refusing to pay for, cover, or refer for abortion. We did a conscience regulation to give life to these laws that Congress has passed, to make sure that no nurse or doctor is compelled to assist in an abortion, right?
Right.
We had a case in Vermont, the University of Vermont, where a nurse was coerced into assisting in an abortion. When she entered the practice to help save lives, she was forced on pain of losing her job to help take a life.
Wow.
That's against the law. So we issued notice of violation in California, notice of violation against the University of Vermont to hold them accountable, because federal funds are at stake at the state level and grant recipients. These are laws, no matter what people think about Roe v. Wade.
Right.
You don't force others to pay for it or perform it or refer for it or cover for it.
Yeah, and the thing that's a surprise is that it hadn't existed before. You know, what you said, you created the vision because
the enforcement.
Yeah, the enforcement of it. It hadn't. I mean, I guess maybe the fact is that it's a new issue. The intrusion on conscience is a new issue. We used to have more. We had frankly more Catholic hospitals and Presbyterian hospitals, and they would not have done those things there. We have less of those, and we have more federal payment of health care, right? So they try to create the requirement. Rebecca, we had been talking about some questions beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Roger, for your work. Along the lines of what you're saying, if healthcare professionals are forced to participate in an abortion, what recourse can they take? What do they need to do?
Contact us. Absolutely contact us. hhs.gov/OCR. hhs.gov/OCR is our web complaint portal. You can learn about the laws that protect people. They protect healthcare providers. They protect people on the patient side as well. They protect against forced sterilization, abortion, assisted suicide, in research programs if people have religious moral objections as well. In insurance, these are many different issues that are covered under the gamut. So if there's a health issue where there's a crisis of conscience, where you think your rights may be violated, or religious discrimination, file a complaint with us. Now, there's another thing to be very much aware of. As the federal government grows, they're doing it through regulations. And we've issued regulations to help create protections for conscience and religious freedom. And it requires people, anybody, to comment.
Right.
That is your opportunity to register your voice
Yep.
and comment during the regulatory rulemaking process. This is the new version of democracy. It's not what the founders envisioned, but it's what we got, and that's what governs people's lives on a day-to-day basis, are regulations. So get familiar with regulations.gov. When there's a regulation that is of interest to you, that touches on life, religious liberty, conscience, any other issue you care about, comment, because your voice will be heard, will be taken into account by law. They all must be read, they all must be responded to substantively. And if you don't comment, you lose your opportunity to raise that argument, and it has consequences down the line. And it makes for a better product. People come up to us in the comment period, they raise issues we had not thought of, consequences or implications we had not thought of, and we adjust and adapt, and that's the way it's supposed to work.
We're talking with Roger Severino, and he said a couple things. hhs.gov/OCR, Office of Civil Rights, OCR. If you want to go find out more, if you have an issue, if you have a complaint, and there's no. It's not like if you complain and you're say wrong, like you don't get penalized. You don't have to pay a fee. You don't get nobody comes and says
you don't need a lawyer.
Yeah, you don't need a lawyer, and so it's a little bit of a it's free help. Even if it turns out, well, that's not quite what fits into this moment. I just tell people that sometimes people think, if I comment or if I file a complaint, I've got to file a fee or something. Roger, one of the things at Eagle Countdown, we're supposed to have our Eagle Council in person. We had to delay that till January because of all this stuff. And so we're doing this virtual gathering, lots of different people. And two sort of through lines that I've tried to keep asking our guests is, one is after 3.5 years, and maybe I know your answer because you're part of it, but I made 100 of Trump's top promises made, promises kept. What they are. Renegotiating NAFTA, and so I asked people, our guests, what's your number one Trump administration promise kept that they ran on? That they, and maybe it's related to your work, maybe it's outside
it is,
that. But
indeed, I think there's no more important issue than the issue of life, and a correlative to that is religious freedom. They really go hand in hand. President Trump, without question, has been the most pro-life, religious liberty president in history, without question. And we've seen the policies that never would have seen the light of day in previous Republican administrations
Right.
become actual policy, right? He actually was able to defund Planned Parenthood.
Right.
He actually did pass a Title X regulation, no more funding of overhead for abortion clinics. He restored the Mexico City policy and expanded upon it to make sure that we're not funding overseas abortion and abortion advocacy. Our conscience work, our conscience rule and regulations to make sure that people aren't forced to pay for abortions or perform abortions against their will. The list goes on and on and on, and the accomplishments have not stopped. And he's been relentless in defending life and religious freedom in a way that we've not seen with any other president. He's issued multiple executive orders, and there's still more to come. There's still more to do, but we should be able to take solace in the promise made and a promise kept when it came to life and religious freedom. And he speaks in a way that other presidents have not on the question of human life in the debate with Hillary Clinton. He spoke without holding back at all. And you see it filter down throughout the rest of the federal government. And now HHS, in our strategic plan, we say explicitly that we're here to defend and protect the health and well-being of all Americans from conception till natural death. And that's in black and white because it sends an important, strong message as to where our values are.
So, and following up, however, you mentioned a lot of it's regulatory, which it kind of raises the stakes every time now about who the president is, right? Because if the president changed, the new administration, they put in a new one of you, and they wouldn't just be rolling it back, they'd be racing to roll it back, but they'd also be rolling it towards antagonism to some of these groups, right? So, I mean, in a funny way, you mentioned that we are where we are. It's the administrative state. And I think you're one, by the way, regulations.gov is a place to watch, to comment. It sounds, and Roger makes a great point, that the requirement is that they actually read this and respond. So you're sort of, if you want to, you could think that you're putting, positive sand in the gears when, of where they're going. If you don't like it, if you like it, you're like, keep going. But the worry would be, you change out the top, you're going to get a different, and you regulate and roll it back, right?
The question of religious freedom and conscience should not be up for debate. And it isn't, because Congress has passed it with bipartisan majorities year after year after year. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act was passed unanimously in the House of Representatives and 97-3 in the Senate. Bill Clinton signed it into law.
Right.
Ted Kennedy, major sponsor. So these issues should not be up for debate. And we've just given it its rightful place. That's all we've actually done, is provided the same tools we have for every other civil right, but applying it to conscience and religious freedom that's in our laws and our statutes. And again, we've acted to change the culture of government, and we've held people accountable when they violate the law. And now we have an institutional structure to make sure that whoever sits in my chair as the Director of the Office for Civil Rights, it won't matter. Just like I'm not undoing civil rights in any other respect.
I see, yeah.
When Congress passes a law, that's the law. But it takes a will to actually put it into practice. And that's all we're doing. And I am fully confident it will carry on into the future. A, because it's the law. B, because we have the structures. And 3, because it's the right thing to do. It really is. Who wants to actually force a nun to assist in an abortion when they always have alternative people that are willing to do it? I mean, even if you're on the right or left of the issue, people of goodwill generally see that you shouldn't coerce people to go against their conscience in that way.
Yeah. Rebecca, you had another question or comment?
Yes. HHS released a conscience rule, I believe it was in 2019, and there's a couple of lawsuits now. Are you able to give an update on that, where those stand?
Yes. So we had a conscience rule that came in, was pared back under Obama dramatically, and we restored and expanded upon it in a way that really just provides the enforcement tools for like every other civil right. That's really what it does. It was in litigation. The comment process, we appreciated. We had something like 250,000 comments.
Wow.
Pretty incredible. So if you didn't comment, you should have. You missed your chance because they make a difference. It's still tied up in litigation, but it does not mean we're not enforcing the law. We still have the statutes that Congress passed. We still have the preceding reg that authorized my office. We still have Congress who actually specifically said my office has authority over assisted suicide claims under Obamacare. That was one of the good things out of Obamacare, was that it said you can't violate people's conscience on assisted suicide, and it gave my office authority. So those things are in place. We're still enforcing the law. We're still going after states like California for requiring universal abortion insurance. Literally, nuns are being required to provide abortion insurance for fellow nuns in California. Again, how does that make sense to anybody? So the laws are still in place. We're still enforcing it under the old regulation while the current new regulation is in litigation.
What would you like to see in the next 4 years? What are you mentioned there's more to be done, more steps. What are the more steps? Is there need for Congress to get straight and do more? Is it just the momentum of these issues that will sort of solidify? Do you need do you wish for or hope that there's a Supreme Court clarification of something? What if you could have the Roger Severino wish list of things to happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years?
Sure. On the question of gender identity, clarification with respect to religious protections under RFRA. Justice Gorsuch said that's an important issue to be decided and clarified soon. So clarity on that. I mean, I have my views that religious freedom is incredibly important, and you could actually have some coexistence with any other civil rights law, because that's been the tradition throughout. So we have Title IX exemption for religious organizations under sex, etc. So I think they actually go well together. And also when it comes to human life, we did a lot on disability rights because we see that as part of our pro-life initiative. We've worked on crisis standards of care during COVID. So to make sure that people aren't put at the end of the line for a ventilator if there's ever a shortage. Thank God there's not been a shortage. But some states had said people with, for example, what they call it severe mental retardation, would be flatly ineligible for a ventilator. Imagine that, based on a disability. Say somebody with Down syndrome. We sprung into action, and states have changed their policies because of our work on that area. We see that as a pro-life initiative that brings people from left and right together on disability rights, because it's the defense of human life. I want to see more of that when it comes to children with Down syndrome. Iceland has said that they have cured their problem, quote unquote, with Down syndrome children because they have eliminated all children with Downs in Iceland. That is chilling.
Wow.
I don't want our country to be in that position. I want us to welcome everybody as equal human beings, regardless of their ability. And disability rights has been an important initiative that we don't want to leave undone. So we want to see that pushed through soon and in the years ahead.
I want to make sure to hit those websites you just told me, so I'm looking for them. hhs.gov/OCR, Office of Civil Rights, and regulation.gov. That's a good one for us to look forward. We're winding down, Roger, so the next 42 days, people care about these issues. They say, hey, I see the direction that Roger Severino and his office has been able to do. I feel like that's in the values I want. Your job's not you're not campaigning, you got a job, but what should people be? How should they be talking about these issues? Where do they fit into the fabric of our political landscape? You don't hear a lot about them in a way. You don't get they don't become so how should people think about them and talk about them?
2 ways. Figure out what your government is doing, not just for you, but to you, right? So you have to be involved, and it could be at the state level, it could be at the federal level. And when you think your conscience rights may have been violated, file a complaint with us. OCR, hhs.gov/OCR. What I find, a lot of people from the conservative persuasion or people of faith are hesitant to ever raise the issue when they feel discriminated against. In part because, to their credit, they could take a lot and they take up the cross, they bear the sufferings, et cetera, et cetera. This is just our lot. If you stick up your neck for what you believe in, you expect these costs. Okay. That's fine, but help us help you, right? So when you feel that especially when it comes to healthcare or human services, your rights have been violated, you have to let us know. You have to let us know, because that's the way we can do something about it, through either regulations or through enforcement actions, or Congress to hear about it and pass laws, or the courts. Of course, the president has done a fantastic job on courts to make sure they're constitutionalist judges that will defend people's conscience and religious freedom rights. So people would have to actually complain in court as well to bring those issues all the way up. So be educated, be aware, and if you think your rights have been violated, do not hesitate to speak up.
Well, thank you, Roger. And let me say another word. Our Eagle Countdown viewers, many of them have listened to my radio show or our podcasts, and one of our guests often is your wife, Carrie Severino, who is in her own right a phenomenal presence for conservatives, for men and women of faith. She's a writer now. She's got that book that's been such a success, and she's recently been battling some health issues. We've been all praying for her in my family, and I know she mentioned she's doing better, but she's extraordinary. It's a great couple. How many children, by the way?
6 children.
6 children. So they're busy people. These are busy people. And so thank you, Roger. And tell your wife we send our best and we appreciate her too. And thank you for everything you're doing. Did I miss anything?
You got it.
I got it. Okay, great.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Roger. And we appreciate. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to finish up just a few.